Okay, I just can't shut up, and this might just turn into a series of videos because I'm home alone and my cat is at the borders because we're driving to Michigan tomorrow, and so I'm just really, really lonely and I just want to talk to you guys. Anyway, so again, watching the last video, and this is going to turn into some really terrible series, I can feel it. I wanted to talk really generally about language and about the categories we create and how we use labels and things like that, because this is really the root of so many of our discussions and so many of our arguments. Who owns term X? Who has the right to say that someone isn't X? Because aren't words fluid and religions fluid and everything's fluid and we redefine everything constantly? Yes, yes, all of those things are absolutely true. And I think that's good, and it's good to talk about. And yes, of course, things evolve and things change, and anytime we have any kind of conversation about what's real Wicca or who's a real witch or whatever, someone always, without fail, says something about how, well, you know, Wicca evolves and things change, and just because, you know, something is traditional doesn't mean that, you know, it doesn't get modified along the way, etc., etc. And again, like, we all have differing opinions about that, but I think by and large that's true. Language changes. The very first video I made was about the use of the term belief and faith, and just because those words were used a certain way 100 years ago, if that's not how we're using them now, does it matter that that's how they were used originally? Do you see what I'm saying? So, does it, like, was that first video that I made even necessary? Because, like, I see you guys, and I know that when you talk about Wicca being a faith, I know you're not doing it from a Judeo-Christian context. So, like, why do I even feel compelled to talk about it? And the answer is that I feel compelled to talk about it because I think language is interesting, and I think the way that people construct categories is interesting, and that's why I'm in religious studies at all. It's not because I'm interested in comparative religion. I really don't even like, the comparative method drives me crazy. Okay, but that's another thing altogether. What I'm ultimately interested in is how people construct reality, how we construct categories, how we construct language, and how that affects how we interact with each other and how we live. That's what I'm interested in. So, just because what I say belief means isn't what you say belief means, like, there is no way to resolve which one of us is right, because the answer is that neither one of us is right. There is no definitive X is X and Y is Y. Okay? Ultimately. Now, that said, of course, we do create categories and labels, and to an extent, we need X to equal X and Y to equal Y, because if we don't have these sorts of barriers, communication becomes really, really difficult, if not impossible. If I'm talking about my Wicca, and you're talking about your Wicca, and they don't look anything alike, we're making certain assumptions and we're trying to communicate to each other about what we do and what we think, and we're not necessarily on the same page, so we're not necessarily accomplishing anything in talking to each other. So, unless we have some kind of foundation about what we mean, then talking to each other doesn't even make any sense. It's like, you know, me tossing around a term, and you assume you know what I mean by that term, but you might not. And likewise, I assume that I know what you mean when you use the same term, but if we're not using it in the same way, then how can we have a conversation about it? So I think that's why it's both important and not important that we categorize and that we say what we mean when we talk about certain things. And so the last video that I made, I really hope it didn't come off as being too offensive, because I really, really don't mean it that way. I just think it's important for you guys to know that when I say Wicca, this is what I mean. X, Y, and Z. And likewise, I mean, when you guys talk about it, I think it's important to make a distinction. So just a quick video about language and labels and categories, and you know what? Ultimately, maybe it is all meaningless. Whatever. But it's also necessary. And I think ultimately we can't be right or wrong about things, okay? Because they are just artificial categories that we've constructed over time and that evolve and change. But at the same time, in order to have effective discourse about it, we have to establish what we mean. So the last couple of videos was me trying to do that. And, you know, like I said, I hope I didn't come off as too much of an asshole. But, like, I've found over time that my understanding of Wicca is very different than most other people's understanding of Wicca. And that has to do with, you know, the lengthy period of time that I spent as a solitary, combined with subsequent training that I had in a coven, in a couple of different covens. Okay, but I mean, like, we're all just products of our experiences, and anyway, I guess I just wanted to tag that on there. And sorry, these videos are so ridiculous, and I really am interested in hearing what you guys think about any of the stuff that I've said, as long as it's, you know, respectful, and, you know, don't tell me that you hate me and I suck, because I'm very, very sensitive. Not really, but, like, don't do that, because it's just mean. I'm especially, like, this is a whole other can of worms, but I'll go ahead and say it. I am interested in what people think it is, what demarcates Wicca, okay? Now, I think we've all encountered the debate that, you know, initiation is what makes you Wiccan, blah, blah, blah. Like, we've all seen that before, whatever, okay? But clearly that isn't what most people actually think, because there are a gajillion people running around on YouTube who have not had formal initiation, who are nonetheless Wiccan, or call themselves Wiccan, or whatever, and that seems to be a common understanding of Wicca, and so, you know, that has to be acknowledged in some capacity. So I would be curious, what is it about what you do, or what you believe, I'll go there, that you feel makes you Wiccan? And I don't think that, I mean, of course we all have our own opinions, and I have certain answers in my head that I think are right, okay? But we all have that, and just because we think that way doesn't make it so. And anyway, I'm curious, just because I do think it's one of those things that, you know, can change. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now, because this is just a big hole I'm digging, and I'm supposed to be baking a cake right now, so I should go do that. Anyway, I hope you guys are all having a good day, and happy solstice to those of you who celebrate it, and Merry Christmas, and all that other stuff. So, yeah.